Thank you guys for being here tonight. I'm gonna tell you about how to make sourdough bread. Now picture yourself at home with baked bread all around you. Sounds delicious, right? Now imagine the smell and the taste and the satisfaction of knowing you made that bread. Knowing how to bake sourdough bread gives you more creativity, and it helps you gain a sense of success and accomplishment, and plus you get fresh bread, so a win's a win. Now, learning the art of sourdough baking gives you more insight on how science ties in with baking, and as I mentioned, it promotes creativity. Once you learn how to make sourdough, you can practically make anything. As I take you through the steps to baking sourdough, you'll learn the most critical steps, starting with creating your starter, to prepping and shaping the dough, and finally, proofing and baking the bread. Hopefully, by the end of this, you'll have a better understanding of sourdough, and you'll be ready to embark on your own sourdough journey. I'm gonna start with the most crucial step of sourdough, which is creating your own starter. Now, starters are a crucial step to making your loaf. If you don't have a starter, you don't have a loaf. Now, to create your starter, you have to mix flour and water together. I prefer a 1-to-1 ratio, but it's all what you prefer. After that, you can let it sit in a jar with it loosely covered so it can provide fermentation and gather the yeast in your environment. The yeast is what's gonna give it such a unique flavor. Every sourdough tastes differently because of that. Unfortunately though, you do have to be a little patient, so you have to wait at least 7 days before it's safe to use, but then you have to wait for it to rise up like 3 days in a row before you can start your sourdough bread. You also have to constantly discard half of it and feed it daily as it's growing. And I use a rubber band to monitor it so I know if it's risen and if it hasn't risen. After your starter has been established, you can move on to the next step, which is creating and shaping of your dough. Once you've decided to start your dough, you can create your dough by taking your starter, some salt and water, and mixing it until the mixture is combined and frothy. After that, you want to combine that mixture with flour. And you want to mix the dough until there's no clumps of flour and until it's all combined. You also want to make sure that it's a shaggy dough. Once it's combined and it's a dough, you can let it rest for an hour. And then after that, you can do about 3 sets of stretch and folds, that's what I prefer. And then every 30 minutes before letting it rest for a few hours. Once it's rested and bulked up, the next part is shaping it into whatever shape you like a ball or a loaf, whatever you prefer. Getting a nice and tight shape on your dough is essential for the structure and exterior according to the master class. Once the dough's been shaped, we can proceed to the next step and the final steps, which is proofing and baking of the dough. So the final step before baking the dough is proofing. You can proof the bread by placing it into a lightly floured banneton or container, whatever you have available to you, and letting it rise for about 8 hours or until it's bulked up and doubled. That enables it to ferment, which then gives it more flavor. Once it's proofed, you can take it out of the container onto some parchment paper and then dust it with some flour. And at that point, you can do some designs, make some nice cuts into it, but you don't want to forget your expansion score. That's when it's going to cause it to bake evenly and not explode. You can then place it into a preheated Dutch oven or whatever you used to bake with, but the most important parts are steam, heat, and how long you bake it for. But that, of course, that's all dependent on your oven and your recipe. After everything, you should be able to get that perfect sourdough loaf. But now that you've learned everything about baking sourdough bread, I want to go ahead and summarize everything with you. So as I've mentioned, the 3 essential steps to creating sourdough is creating your starter, forming your dough and shaping it, and then letting it proof and baking it. The steps are crucial, and you won't be making any sourdough without it. But instead of just picturing it yourself with all this bread around you, you can bring it to life by following the steps I give you. You can be filled with joy and satisfaction and success when you taste something that you've created. It's about having fun and learning from the mistakes you do when you make sourdough. Making sourdough, it's not about being perfect. You'll gain more and more confidence as you bake even more. And remember, if you can bake sourdough, you can bake anything. Thank you so much and have a good night.